Oh, hey there. Getting you ready for Jags and 49ers. Hope you had a great bye week. John Lund, Adam Copeland, Dennis Brown. We're just talking about the issues with the 49ers, and they are plentiful as all week long. We talked about the Jags and the 49ers. Defensive issues we'll get into at one point during this 3-game losing streak. About everything has been exposed for the 49ers. We'll get into that as well. Lots to talk about Jacksonville, but of course the 49ers as well. 10 a.m. for the start with Tim and Greg. And I'll ask you this because all week long I've heard about other teams coming off bye weeks and injuries and this and that and other things that I think are excuses, not explanations. The only reason I say that is because I've never heard you talk about like, oh, we had to go across country for a 10 a.m. Like if you had said that in front of Ronnie Lott as an excuse, not an explanation, like, oh, Ronnie, we got this 10 a.m. start in Jacksonville. Because we hear about that now. We hear the Niners were tired. We're halfway through the season. We've heard all their teams coming off bye weeks.
They don't even play in the preseason anymore, guys. Like what?
So tired at the midway point, 10 a.m. start. Woe's me, man.
Yeah, right. And it's a different athlete now, right? It's halfway during the season, and like you said, Cobes, no, you don't play in the preseason and you're tired. That doesn't make much sense. I think it's just an excuse. When we were playing, we would play New York back-to-back, Giants and the Jets, and then we would come home in between. So it's a different athlete. So I guess you handle them differently.
You'd come home in between when you played a game in the same city, back-to-back weeks.
Oh, yeah, get back on an airplane.
Now we're going to West Virginia for 3 weeks at a time. And I'm not knocking that. I understand that we've evolved and we've got to take care of players and athletes. And the investment is different now, too, right? Like, Dennis, to the credit of the way players are treated now, and this goes back to, Players Association rights and the medical advancements we've made. In your era, guys were not treated the same way. And before your era, even worse, more indentured servitude like. So it's a different situation now where you've got to take care of your products. Guys are supposed to voice what their injuries are, and oftentimes they're protected. But, the difference between this and the NBA is a world of difference. Now, it is interesting the Niners are coming off of a bye here, playing another team coming off of a bye in Jacksonville. Niners entered on a 3-game losing streak. Jacksonville goes into their bye as the hottest team in football.
Was it 5 games they've won?
5 consecutive. And so the Niners are playing a team here for the third game in 4 games, third time in 4 games, a team that's coming off a bye. And 2 of them happen now on the road across the country. So real quick, John, going back to your Ronnie Lott one, I don't think Ronnie Lott would have freaked about that. He'd have been like, Jacksonville?
Right.
What the hell are we doing in Jacksonville playing a football game?
I don't want to start things off on a negative note. I guess what I've heard all week long, I love to use this term of excuses versus explanations. There are certain things. You lose your quarterback, that's an explanation to lose. Last year the 49ers could have used that excuse. They got down to their third quarterback. They still won. But all week long I hear about all these teams coming off byes, which is absolutely true. It's a 10 a.m. start in Jacksonville. Kyle said during the week we looked tired. To Adam's point, you didn't play in the preseason. It's the midway point of the season. I don't understand it. And again, look, I'm not athletic. You can see me. I'm not an athlete. I'm not ripping on these guys. I'm just like, we've done the show together, all of us, for so long. Right. And I've talked to you so many times, both on and off the air. And then we can move on to this thing. I don't remember your teams using 10 a.m.s or being tired or a team coming off a bye or any of these kind of things that again, there are certain things I can use as an explanation and say, yeah, that's why they lost. But right now, this 3-game losing streak to me is not about the opponents and not about buys and not about any of this other stuff. It's about the 49ers not playing 49er football. They're not running it. They're not stopping the run. They're not getting after the quarterback. They're turning the ball over. Those are things that when the 49ers are right, coming off a bye, 10 a.m. start, I don't care. If they do what they do, they win, and the opponent doesn't even matter.
Yeah, and that's just execution, right? And that's what we got the first 5 weeks, right? We got that execution. You rushed the passer. You stopped the run. You executed on offense. You scored 35-plus points on offense. You protected Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy didn't throw interceptions. So you're talking about execution, and that's what football's about. And tired or whatever it is, getting on the road, getting on the plane, going across country. None of that matters. You're out there. It is your profession, and you expect, to deliver at the end of the day. And it's about execution, and that's what they have to get back to. But truth be told, guys, this is a tough game. We were just talking about it. This is a tough matchup. Jacksonville on the road or at home, whatever it is. This is a tough matchup because they're a good football team. They run the ball well. They got an athletic quarterback, and they got a really good secondary, and they got a good defense.
They don't do a lot of explosive plays, but what's happened with Trevor Lawrence is, and Doug Peterson, this is a quarterback whisperer, right? This is a guy who came in with Urban Meyer and I wonder where Trevor Lawrence would be if he weren't his quarterback his rookie season, or his coach his rookie season, if things hadn't gone that poorly, because he was ready to go, I think, as a rookie quarterback. We're seeing what C.J. Stroud can do when he steps in. He's a different type of guy, but he's got mobility. He can get out, he can run, he can extend plays. In some capacities, he's a little bit like Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow's a bigger armed quarterback. I think he's a bigger, in terms of what he can do to you, take over a game. I don't know that Trevor Lawrence is there yet, but he is right there on the brim, and the team itself is better. Josh Allen, 9 sacks on the year? I think he's tied for 5th in the NFL, and the Niners have been giving up sacks. They've been turning the ball over. 29 first downs allowed, back-to-back games with over 400 yards of total offense. This wasn't just a Brock Purdy issue. This was an execution issue. You talked about the Niners not getting after the quarterback and not running the ball effectively, and that's not Niner football. It has to change today against a team that has been really good between the 20s, not quite as effective in the red zone.
Let's call that the QB comparison. That's sponsored by Friedman's Appliance, proudly serving all of Northern California with a wide selection of luxury appliances. Visit them today. Pleasant Hill to see the Friedman's difference, and our good friends at Dolce Vita Tequila, pure and simple.
For me.
Just to finish up the QB comparison, I think that we all know this locally, nationally. They don't look at it as closely. Brock has played well and made really good throws over this 3-game losing streak, but one of the problems is, and it gets magnified when you do it, is turnovers. He's turned the ball over 6 times in the second half of the last 3 games. So
fourth quarter,
exactly right. So if you want to make the excuse in Minnesota,
one late third, like the final minute of the third was one. Well, yeah, I think too. Right?
The first interception he threw of the season against Cleveland, which was just maybe the ball slipped out of his hand, whatever. Then you go to Minnesota, and whether he was concussed or not, and I was talking to Tim Ryan this week, he says, well, he wasn't clear-minded. Okay, then he probably shouldn't have been in there. But if he is in there, then you have to count him. And he throws one that's kind of inexplicable, and then he throws the second one where the player makes a great play on the ball. Then you go to 2 weeks ago against Cincinnati. This tells me that Brock's trying to do too much. The Jermaine Pratt interception where he misses the handoff, he goes out to the right. They're in scoring range right there in a close game. You just can't try to lob that over the linebacker. Live the fight another day, slide down. You're trying to do too much. And then the second one where Wilson, the middle linebacker, 55, makes the pick. Sorry, but that's a Jimmy pick, and we'd be ripping the hell out of Jimmy if he made the throw. Linebacker standing right there. Again, you're in the scoring zone in a close game, and he throws the pick, and for all intents and purposes, at that point, the game's over. There's a linebacker right there. I know that behind him, the route, there was 2 guys by each other, so the route concept wasn't exactly perfect. But still, we wouldn't worry about that. We'd be ripping Jimmy, but we're not ripping Brock. Well, I get it, but it's
a body of work thing. When we saw that from Jimmy, by the way, I saw that from Jimmy like 2 weeks ago. Yeah. Still, the guy is still doing that. So I think the comp there is
he won't be doing it anymore.
We were talking this way because he won't, because he's not playing anymore. So he's sitting his ass on the back. The guy's done pretty well for himself. Let me tell you, for putting a football right in the linebacker's hands as easily and as consistently as Jimmy Garoppolo
he's set for life
and does. My man has done really well for himself. I tip my cap to him.
Really
I wish I could throw so many picks and make so much money. But in terms of Brock Purdy, you're right. I think what you're saying is absolutely true, and it looked like it. I think you and I said to each other when it happened, that kind of looked like a Jimmy pick.
Well, I tweeted it out, and I remember a bunch of people going, all right, he's not Jimmy. And it's like, the point is,
it can stylistically, and it can be the same type of mistake. The counter I have to you is that it's not a mistake Brock has shown to consistently make. Now, over the last few weeks, we've seen more of that happen. I won't say they're all that way, because you just described 3 or 4 sort of different interceptions. The point is that we're describing 3 or 4 different interceptions, right? They're all happening in the second
timing.
half.
I think the big thing has been the timing
of it.
When
and where they've worked.
So the narrative when they were winning at 5-0 on Brock was, okay, he's doing great, but can he bring a team back? Can he, under a stressful situation, can he drive him down the field? He did in Cleveland. The kicker missed the kick. In Minnesota, he had 2 opportunities, couldn't do it. At home against Cincinnati, we're talking about 2 opportunities late in the game to keep the team in the game, or in the first instance where he threw it to Pratt to actually get back right in the game. So the narrative remains, whether it's fair or not. Now, he has made a bunch of good throws. Let's make sure we're clear on that. He has made some really high-level throws.
16 and 19 in that game, which it was in Minnesota before the fourth quarter.
And you listen to guys like Kurt Warner and Daryl Johnson. I've heard a bunch of national guys come to his defense and say, look, guys, watch the tape.
Alex
and they're
Smith,
right.
all that, yeah.
Alex Smith has done it. They're 100% right, but the problem is those interceptions are so magnified, especially at the time that he threw them, because when he threw them, essentially, the game was over. That's all.
Yeah, so the issue, the other part of that is, and this is what lies on the quarterback's shoulders, right? It's the nature of the beast. Is in the Minnesota game, if Christian McCaffrey doesn't fumble early when they're driving, maybe they're not in that situation. If that touchdown doesn't happen before the end of the first half, maybe they're not in that situation. However, he plays quarterback, and this is what quarterbacks do. Quarterbacks get paid to do this. Brock doesn't get paid to do this yet, but this is why he's here. This is why they've got him in this position, and the other guys around him have been paid. So I'm not, I think there is some criticism that should be handed out. I also think he played some pretty effective football, and I think guys around him did not execute. I'm intrigued to see what happens with the offensive line today, whether or not they're able to run the ball, whether or not they can get after the quarterback. Chase Young debuts. There's a bunch of storylines here, and I got a great note for you that Tom and I had on Friday about teams who have lost 3 games in a row and remain over 500 going up against teams who have won 5 or more in a row. It's not a big sample size, but teams in the Niners situation have fared pretty well in NFL history.
All right, we'll do that coming up next. We'll get into that. We got the big question coming up. We got a bunch more stats for you as well. Oh, the Niners made a big trade since the last time we were doing a pregame show.
What?
That deal. So how much can Chase Young help? Dennis is here. He'll tell you what he needs to do coming in. We'll do all that coming up. We're getting you ready for the Jaguars and the 49ers on the road. 10 a.m. start. Only here on the Sports Leader.
I can honestly say I'm sort of built for this, not in an arrogant way, but I've always believed is certain, it's two things. It's what you hear and what you listen to. I hear a lot of the outside noise. I don't listen to it, good or bad. As you mentioned, I've been doing this for a while. I understand the emotions of this game and what we play at this level. I try not to be emotional. We're 5-3. The standard is so high here, right? And we lost 3 in a row that everybody feel like the ceiling is collapsing on us. We're in a good position. We need to turn it around. So we got a lot of football ahead of us. We want to start progressing, get better in November and start playing our best in December. So I've seen this. I've been around this. I can take it. I'm the new guy in, it is what it is. I have confidence in myself. Most importantly, I have confidence in those players and the coaches that we're together and we're going to come through this.
As voice of 49ers defensive coordinator Steve Wilks, who's going to be on the sidelines today. I got to tell you, one of my favorite things in all of professional sports, or sports in general, is listening to press conferences, especially when things get tense. And maybe more than anything, press conferences in football. Coaches in football are so maniacal about the game. You've got to obsess over the game. You've got to be totally entrenched and involved in it. Like Joe Gibbs started sleeping on the couch. I heard Murph and Mac talking about that this week. Like he's the first guy we heard about saying, I'm spending 1,000 hours a week or whatever it is prepping for this game. Well, I hear Steve Wilks there, who a lot of criticism, I think, of him over the last couple of weeks because of the way the defense has performed. Don't forget, offense hasn't been great either. Run game hasn't been there. O-line hasn't been great. But a lot of this, for some reason, the narrative came down to him not being on the sideline, which was the big difference, they think, or optically it looks like, between he and D'Amico Ryans and Robert Saleh, who were on the sidelines. Well, they were 5-0 with him in the booth. Don't forget that, right? Yeah. they were pretty damn good then. What happens when you come out and you struggle today? You say, get your ass back upstairs, go back to the booth. Well, Kyle Shanahan told us in the media this week he preferred, when he was an offensive coordinator, being in the booth. But in terms of communication, if this is something that the linebackers wanted and some guys talked about, we can talk about some of the comments. I thought some of the comments made this week about the players having to make up for bad play calls, I thought that was a little bit unnecessary as we head into a situation where you're trying to avoid 4 consecutive losses and maintain some hope for the number 1 seed. So, Dennis, just your thoughts about that narrative this week, and Steve Wilks coming to the sideline. Is that anything to you? I didn't think it was that big of a deal.
I mean, if the linebackers, if your guys on the field think it's a big deal, it's probably a big deal. But I can't remember if any of my coordinators were on the field. If Pete Carroll was on the field or Bill McPherson was on the field when I was in the league. So I don't know.
Who was effectively the green dot guy when you were playing?
I don't know. I don't know if we had. I'm really dating myself now. I don't know if we had green.
It was
the middle linebacker.
Right.
So it was Matt Millen or it was Kenny Norton.
He's getting to play relayed and then giving.
Yeah, I don't remember if D coordinators were on the field. I mean, who? I don't know. I can't even remember. But if Fred Warner thinks it's important, it's important. But at this point, and that's a great point for 5 weeks, everything was great. Then you lose 3 games, and now you got to figure out how to make adjustments.
That's how I like his perspective. He says, I get it. I'm the new guy, and I'm built for this, and when the sky is caving in or when the ceiling's caving in, I've got to make a change, and we've got to prove. But he says, I'm made to do that. What I mean by is the press conference of so many guys get defensive. So many guys get, but he didn't do any of that. He said, I'm built for this stuff.
But he's got to make some adjustments now. Yeah. I mean, he's got to figure that part out. I mean, he's got to figure out why his defense is giving up so many yards. I mean, in the run, where that's always been kind of the staple. I mean, we talk about the goal rush and getting to the passer, but this defense at one point was shutting down the run. Teams could not run against this team. And John and I were talking about it before the show. You got to figure it out because they've done something. Offensive coordinators have done something, and they've seen something on tape, and they see how they can run against this team. And they spread it out. That's what they do. They spread it out. So you got to figure out, defensive coordinator, upstairs or downstairs, how you can start defending the run, because now you run into a Jacksonville team that runs the ball pretty well.
And that's why it's a tough matchup today. So I want you to explain something, because this is the question I asked Dennis when I walked in here today. Look, I'm not trying to say I'm some All-22 tape watcher, but the one thing that is really obvious, and then you hear it from all these coordinators, and here's what's simply happened, because everything ties together. If you give up the running game and the offense finds himself in 3rd and 3 and 3rd and 4, the fans always say, why aren't they getting pressure on the quarterback? You can get pressure on the quarterback if it's 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 9. If it's 3rd and 4, he's getting rid of it in about 2 seconds, and you have no opportunity to get to the quarterback, which goes back to the running game. And what's happening is in the wide 9 is it's so split apart that there's already natural holes in there. And what's happening is Bosa and the other guys, and Chase Young is this way too, is they get up the field so fast. We hear Gold Rush, right? They get up the field so fast, they're running between those gaps, and the adjustment hasn't been made. So I walked in here today and going, you know what? Okay, if I'm stupid, I'm stupid. But why not on rundowns do you tighten those things up? And then if it's obvious pass downs, then you can go wide and you can get that running start to things. Because right now, coordinators, and it's not very hard, are just saying we're going to run where they're not. There's wide gaps there that they're running in. They're running where the players aren't. And then what's happening is the defensive guys are getting so jumpy. Bose is a perfect example. He's diving inside. Mixon's just going to the outside. So they've got him inside. They've got him outside. They've got him guessing wrong. And offenses have the 49ers defense down. So conversely, they're finding themselves in third and shorts where they're able to do whatever they want. The defense is at the mercy, and you cannot get to the quarterback. So this all ties together. Why they're not getting to the quarterback, why they're because you're not in 3rd and 9 because teams are easily running, and then they're missing tackles when they do have opportunities.
Yeah, and that's the big thing, the missing the tackles. And we're not used to seeing Fred Warner miss a lot of tackles or Greenlaw miss a lot but they are. They're not wrapping up. And then up front, you stress out your 3 techniques because, you got those wide 9s on each ends, and then it's the big gap in the middle. So what happens is you got to tighten up. Your ends have to tighten up, and then your 2-3 techniques, you got to be true 2-gappers.
Those are your 2 inside guys.
Inside guys.
You're talking about Hargrave and Armstead, right?
Correct. You got to be a true 2-gapper, and you have to be able to defend those 2 gaps. And your linebackers, you got to flow. You got to get your run reads, your run fits, as everybody talks about now. But you got to make the tackles. When those running backs come up in there, because those gaps are wide now. I mean, you have to play old school 2-gap. Dana Stubblefield and Brian Young, 2-gap technique. You got to guard 2 gaps. You got to be able to defend 2 gaps. And that's what it comes down to.
Adam Copeland, Dennis Brown, John Lund with you here. Niners and the Jags coming your way at 10 a.m. kick from Jacksonville. We'll throw it out to Tim Ryan and Greg Papa coming up at 9 a.m. Let's get you the health report sponsored by Danville Neuropathy Center. Bring your nerve pain to an end, or bringing your nerve pain to an end. The big one, do we have an update yet on Trent Williams? I guess that's what we're waiting for.
Well, they're saying now that he's going to play. I mean, Schefter and some of the national guys
Thursday, Friday?
Yeah, so
he did in a limited capacity.
Right.
Kyle did say to us on Thursday and Friday that he was. I think it was reported Friday truly questionable, and he told us on Thursday he was truly questionable.
Yeah, what was the term he used? Like
he
very questionable.
He said he said it's very game time decision kind of is what he was talking about.
Diana Rossini reported that on Friday. So I left my show at 2:00 on Friday thinking he's not playing.
I thought so too, and then he came on with us that same day, a couple hours after that, after practice on Thursday afternoon, and said, yeah, he practiced in a limited capacity yesterday and today. It is questionable. He said it's taken longer than we thought it was going to.
Well, here would be my question is that if they didn't lose 3 straight, let's say they even win one of those games, Moody hits the one in Cleveland and they're 6-2 like Jacksonville
might not.
You have to worry about it. Is he playing? Because I almost think that there's a desperation here because Seattle's 5-3, and I don't think they're very good. We can get into that at some other point. Geno Smith's really struggling. They're at home against Washington today, which is a game that they've got a good pass rush. Washington doesn't have a good offensive line. I think Seattle probably wins that game. Yeah. So they're looking at this thing going, wait a minute, we're in a desperate situation, Trent. We need you to play. Because we've heard from the Schefters and so forth that he's going to go today, and Debo, we know, is going to play. He's not even on the injury report. So to get Trent back, to get Debo back, we don't have to tell everyone. Debo got hurt in the first game in Cleveland, and Trent got stepped on and really wasn't himself in Cleveland. So all of a sudden you lose 3 straight, and you basically didn't have Trent Williams or Debo Samuel, which is massive. And one of the reasons they scored 17 in 3 consecutive games. So I'm not saying that it's not going to help a ton. But the last time I saw Trent hurt was in the NFC Championship game a couple of years ago, and he just wasn't himself. So I love Trent Williams, but is he 80%? Is he 90%? Like, where is Trent Williams?
Go ahead, Dennis.
I think having him in there is important. I think, is Aaron Banks playing today? I think he's out.
He's out. You're going to see John Faciliano today, right?
And he's a good player.
Feliciano, excuse me.
He's like a Street Fighter guy is kind of how everyone is kind of said is like he's his jersey's out and he's kind of sloppy looking at everything, but he's just kind of one of those grinder types, Yeah.
He rolls out of bed and hits. Yeah. He's the baseball
And
term.
look, they need somebody in that middle because a year ago I thought that was the weak point, and those guys played well last year. But
they've taken a step back, I think, a bit this year.
Banks, Burford is committing way too many penalties. One of the reasons they can't run, Trent Williams will help a ton. But the interior of the offensive line, remember Tomlinson in Cleveland killed him. Minnesota was killing him inside. They have got to get better on the interior. It's going to be tough to run.
Yeah, and then Colt McKivitz, he's given up a lot of sacks. And then who's he got today? He's got Josh Allen today.
He's
so,
pretty good.
I mean,
and they'll move him all over the place. Allen he'll come up the middle, will go both sides of the line with you. So, I mean, this is a guy, that's why he's got 9 sacks. He's one of the best pass rushers in football, and he's top 5. And they've really, really struggled with some of these elite guys. So as far as the rest of the team goes health-wise, I know Dre Greenlaw, Kyle told us that the bye helped him more than anybody. But
well, ankle, shoulder, and some people are saying that that's kind of what's contributing to
the
his missed
hamstring
tackles.
as well. The guy's a missile.
He's hurt and he's not practicing. So, excuse, explanation, but that's why they say he's missing.
The guy plays hard. It's tough to believe that he's not actually hurt considering the types of hits he lays on people. And it feels like a lot of games. Remember Reuben Foster would go down like every game after he laid a hit, and then he would come back in the game, but he didn't impact the game. It seems like this guy's, every once in a while, he'll get hit. He'll go down. We're like, damn, Greenlaw's down. Like 3 plays later, he's back in, hitting somebody else hard. He's what if Reuben Foster actually laid wood?
Reuben Foster.
Remember that guy?
Man.
Wow.
Man, remember him? But you
traded up in the draft.
Wasn't he always on his back? Am I wrong on that? Wasn't he always hurt?
He was a missile now.
But he was when he played.
He was banged up. Where's Reuben now?
He played in a couple of those leagues, USFL and all this stuff, and I don't know.
Maybe he's winning a Germany Super Bowl with.
Could be.
With
who's your guy?
Tom
Sula.
Tom Sula.
Oh my gosh!
He just won like some German Super Bowl.
He's like the Bill Walsh of Europe.
This is painful. This is very painful. If you have a
Intimator.
hangover today and you're hearing Reuben Foster and Jim Tom Sula, you want to go back to bed.
Bill Walsh of Europe is a tough one to live with. You know what I mean? Anyway, Adam
Jimmy
Copeland.
Tom Sula.
Jimmy Tom Sula. Oh man, he shouldn't have been in that role. He shouldn't have been there.
We knew it from the press conference when Trent Baalke, the GM of the Jaguars, had to jump in.
Trent Baalke.
What he's trying to say.
Let's go down memory.
I'll tell you what he's trying to say. He's trying to say we're going to draft more guys without ACLs and we're going to lose more. See you guys in a few years in Jacksonville.
He had to jump in to save Tom Sula in the press conference.
See you guys week 10 in Jacksonville.
No. Does he have a torn ACL? Then we're interested.
Oh, man. Our old buddy Trent Baalke is down in Jacksonville. Actually got him playing good football, man. He's built a pretty good team down there. Doug Peterson, who wins a Super Bowl and then is just kind of kicked to the curb. Nobody offered him a gig. Now they're playing pretty well for him. Seems like he's found a home. So a good team here in the Jacksonville Jaguars, entering winners of 5 consecutive. Off of their bye week, Niners losers of 3 consecutive. Brock is back from the farm. Trent Williams looks like he's going to return. Deebo Samuel returns to the lineup. Chase Young's in there wearing number 92. He's going to make his debut. Can the Niners end the 3-game losing streak? We'll talk about it all with Matt Mayoko, who is out in Jacksonville. He'll join us next. By the way, we're streaming right now on YouTube, twitch.tv/thesportsleader. You can catch us on the KNBR app and on KNBR.com. We'll be back for all of that as well on the postgame show. Adam Copeland, Dennis Brown, John Lund, Matt Mayoko, our NBC 49ers Insider, joins us next on the Sports Leader.
Jimmy Tom Sula, open up my shirt like a Jimmy Tom Sula.
I'm just really excited is adding 2 guys to our group here over the last month. Not only we're going to get better with those 2, but it helps everyone else get better because you're more confident to rotate guys and put guys in any situation and keeps guys fresher. And I really believe the key to rushing a quarterback and being a good pass rush team is to be able to swarm by it's how you rush by a group. Yeah. And I feel like we've had some good individual rushes this year, but I just feel collectively our 4 guys rushing together, or even 5 when we bring a linebacker with them, we need to do it better as a whole.
And, of course, the voice of Kyle Shanahan saying the whole team's got to be better here out of the bye week, and they're going to go cross-country to Jacksonville to do so against the hottest team in football. Let's talk about it with a guy who's out there, boots on the ground for Matt Mayoko, our 49ers insider from NBC Sports Bay Area. Matt, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
Doing okay. How's Jacksonville?
Jacksonville is the what do they call this? The Sunshine State?
They do. Well,
not very sunshiny.
Yeah.
It's very, very overcast, misty. There's going to be no rain, but it's kind of a dreary day here in Jacksonville.
Okay. All right.
I'm looking at this. Yeah, it is. Man, it is ugly looking at those clouds.
What are you looking at?
I'm looking at video that just got shot.
Video?
Yeah.
Oh.
We got Matt Mayoko though in our KNBR Weather Center telling us what's going on. I'm going to go with you, Matt. I don't need the app.
It's the clouds are, I would say, ominous.
Yeah, here.
Ominous.
Send you. I think I can do this.
Yeah, come on.
Matt Mayoko's going to give us a live weather report here from Jacksonville.
I'm going to, John, I'm going to send this to you, John.
Hey,
go ahead.
will you send
technology.
Can I ask you a quick question before we get deep into 49ers stuff? Because I think you shot this video because you do a very nice job of this. You hide out and you wait for players to enter the building. Did you
I don't hide out.
Well, okay,
you
don't.
Sound like I'm a creeper.
Where were you hiding?
You do these for home games, but did you shoot Brock Purdy coming in today?
I did.
Was that you?
Yeah.
What is his style? Because he's way too young to dress like this. He's got like tight khakis on, a Tommy Bahama shirt,
might have been
and
a
some
sad
tennis
shirt.
shoes.
It kind of looked like we were saying. Looked like it might have been wearing.
I just want my quarterback to be like. I want him to look like Brady. Like I want him to be swag. He looks like he looks. We were just talking about this. Like he's Kirk Cousins ish. In his dress.
Well, it's if Kirk Cousins is like the dad, like showing up for a PTA meeting, I would say that Brock is like hustling between classes to make sure he gets to algebra on time.
Okay,
that's kind of my thought.
Okay,
yeah.
And by the way, he's got to get A- in algebra. You know what I mean? He's like doing pretty well.
That's a compliment, right?
Yeah.
He's taking algebra. Like he's not taking some flunky course.
Yeah.
He's not taking
pre-algebra.
101.
Yeah, no, he's just trying to get into it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He tested in. Right.
No, and you know what? Maybe it's a good thing because he's not thinking a ton about his dressing and stuff like that. Because like Trey Lance would, or I remember Alex Smith got really smart. He used to wear that San Diego hat, and it's like, bro, you're in San Francisco. You put on the SF hat, like he
hasn't thrown a Dolphins hat yet.
No, he hasn't. Oh, that's true. That was not the smart. Trey had the LA hat. I was like, oh, bro.
I'm gonna make a comment about John. John, are you the one that should be like?
No,
great call. Great question.
Yeah, believe me, my fashion sense. I don't have a lot of it, but I just think he's too young. What's he, 23? I just think he's too young to be dressing like my dad. Like
you want to live vicariously through him, and you want him to be more fashionable, so that you don't have to be.
Yeah, I believe me, I'm not fashionable. Whatever's on the floor and smells okay, I put on.
Circle this back, John. If you were quarterback of the Niners, what would you wear to games?
Something nice. I know Matt Mayoko's gonna hide out in a corner and with his phone, so I'm gonna look pretty good.
You wouldn't go with the khakis, huh?
No, I wouldn't go. I don't own khakis.
Okay, let me tie this all together though, Matt, because I want
you Jim Harbaugh, dude. Come on, man.
I'm gonna tie this all together because earlier this week we did have a comment from Brock when he first got back from being on the farm, which I thought everybody was kind of intrigued and enamored with how Brock spent his bye week out on the farm, the video that came out. But when he came back and he talked about perspective, Matt, and he said, I just thought it was a good thing for me to get away, to go home and think about, I'm quarterback of the 49ers, of the San Francisco 49ers. I thought that was a crazy thing to think, but he goes, but there's all this regular life stuff going on back at home. And I wonder for him if that's, he played in front of 80,000 people for 4 straight years. The NFL doesn't seem to faze him, the calm, collect demeanor of his, and I think that's why I think that's why I've got confidence in his ability to correct what's gone wrong going forward.
Yeah, and, as a quarterback, you get to have some kind of confidence, right? He's a guy from Iowa. I think the way this team has played the last 3 weeks, I would not want to see my starting quarterback sitting on again, I'm from the city, so I don't understand if that's relaxing, sitting on whatever that thing is. driving through whatever you drive through. I didn't understand that part. I mean, you're losing right now, and I would want to see my quarterback, maybe in a room somewhere watching some film instead of sitting on whatever those things are. A tractor, right? Is that what it's called? A tractor?
Well, yeah.
So
well,
I mean, that's what I would want to see. And and my question to you is, what's this team doing right now? I mean, this is good. It's going to be tough. This is going to be a tough football game, and this has got to be serious. I mean, you have to have some sense of urgency. You're not going to walk into this stadium and play this team like you've played the last 3 weeks and expect to win a football game, Matt. So what is this team? What's going on? What's the leadership? What's the vibe of this team right now?
I mean, I think it's the vibe of the team is maybe, I don't know, they seem a little bit perplexed. Like, hey, we're better than this. Like, nobody expected this team to ever have a 3-game losing streak. But I think also everybody realizes, like, through these 3 games, and heck, I'd even go through the first 8 games of the season, is there one player on the 49ers, maybe with the exception of Purdy? Well, I guess Purdy the last 3 games, they made the turnovers in the last quarter of those games. But I don't know if there's anybody on the team that probably feels like he's played really good football. And I don't know that there's anybody on the team that has hit like what that person believes his expectations are, or even what the team's expectations for that player would be. I mean, the one guy would be McCaffrey, but then he had the fumble against the Vikings that really kind of destroyed that game early on. And so I think, there's no finger pointing. The only finger pointing that should be done at all on this team and has been done is just the person, each player kind of pointing the finger back at themselves, because this is a talented team. They do have a lot of playmakers. They have a lot of guys who fit good roles on this team, but none of them, I mean, can you think of anybody who just has to be really thrilled with the way they played? I don't think so.
No, you
can
be.
I think that's kind of so I think that's kind of the mindset heading into the final 9 games of the season, is that there is so much more out there for them. The season, despite the 3-game losing streak, their goals remain intact, and now they add Chase Young that they believe, I mean, he's not going to be this like secret elixir that makes everything great, but he can sure make things a lot better, for the other guys on the defensive line, for the linebackers, and maybe even more so for the defensive backs.
Matt Maiocco is joining us from Jacksonville. By the way, got the video. That is a very nasty day, and thank you for the weather report. Matt Maiocco.
You're very welcome.
Our 49ers Insider. Check out the 49ers Talk podcast for all the latest. Injury-wise, that's obviously a huge thing. We knew Debo was going to be back, but we weren't sure on Trent, especially when Kyle, who was a little bit testy with you guys on Friday, was kind of like he's very questionable in this game. So I took that at the time to think, okay, well, Trent's not going to play, but now it's coming out that it looks like Trent is going to play, right?
Yeah, and I'm kind of surprised, too, because I don't know that I've ever talked to a veteran on a Friday who seemed less confident that he was going to play than Trent Williams did on Friday. He just did not seem like he was all that committed to playing. And so this isn't the game to do that in either. I mean, I guess every team has great edge rushers, but he's going up against Josh Allen. And not the quarterback, the guy who gets after the passer, Josh Allen, who has 9 sacks for the Jags. He was in that 2019 draft with Bosa and Quinnen Williams and those guys. So, that's definitely going to be an area to look at. John Feliciano will start for Aaron Banks. Deebo Samuel should be back. 49ers have all their starters on offense back, except for Banks, of course, with the hyperextended toe. He's going to miss a game or 2 or maybe 3. So the defense is healthy. Their 49ers are close to full strength, and they're going to be facing a team that's really good, a team that's won 5 consecutive games, a team very much like the 49ers. This team, the Jaguars, like to get out in front and just kind of, not necessarily go into a 4 corners offense, but, get out in front and then just kind of wear you down a little bit. And kind of similar teams in that sense the 49ers have Christian McCaffrey. They're going to get the ball to him a lot, both in the run game and the pass game. And the Jaguars have Travis Etienne, who they do the same thing to. Etienne actually has more carries than McCaffrey this season, and McCaffrey leads the league in yards from scrimmage. So, I don't know if it's as simple as this, but I think the team that gets out to a touchdown lead or can bump it out to 10 points, it's going to be really difficult for the other team to come back.
Talking to Matt Mayoko, who is in Jacksonville. Niners and the Jags kicking off at 10 a.m. Matt, I'm wondering about Dre Greenlaw. Kyle told us this week that the bye had helped him the most in terms of his health. We're talking about how he's a guy who just kind of puts his body on the line. It seems like he goes down a lot of times in games and then comes back in and continues to make plays. How healthy is he and his status for today?
Yeah, no, he's going to play. He'll be Dre Greenlaw, but yeah, you're right. I mean, he's a guy that does throw his body in there, doesn't have much regard for it. He's been banged up a lot this season. And he started off with maybe a hamstring, then an ankle, and now the shoulder really seems to be bothering him. But, there's nothing structurally wrong with it. Like Deebo Samuel a few weeks back, his shoulder was injured and just didn't feel right, and they went to another level of, it didn't show up on MRI or X-ray, and they went to a CT scan and showed a hairline fracture. So, there's nothing like that going on with Greenlaw, but he's banged up, and he's gotten 2 weeks off now or whatever, 13 days off to go play football, and so we'll see, but that's certainly, an area to watch, just kind of see how he is after every play, because he is an aggressive player. He's a hard hitter, and sometimes he administers more punishment to himself than he does to the ball carrier.
Matty, you've got your top five, and you have Hufanga, McCaffrey, Oliver. Then you have then you have the question marks after that. We talked to you on Friday. Your number one guy, and we haven't talked about him yet, Chase Young. How much do you expect him to play? Do you expect him to start? What is going to be his impact, do you think, today?
I think he's going to play a lot. I think the 49ers got him. They realize they only have him for 9 games, I guess, and then the postseason. It is my understanding that he will start this game, number 92, and I would expect for him to play a lot. I would expect him to play. Well, I mean, probably the 4th most snaps of anybody on the defense line, maybe the 2nd or 3rd most snaps of anybody on the defensive line. I think now what he gives the 49ers is a starter, a legitimate starter. Everybody talks about how good their defensive line is and all that, but really when you look at their defensive line and their depth chart, they did not have 4 starters before. And Cleveland Ferrell is a guy that has done a fine job, but he was not a starter with the Raiders after his first couple seasons. And now Chase Young, here's the thing, I think with the 49ers defensive front right now, all 4 of those guys could start for every team in the league, or just about 31 or 30 of the teams in the league. Armstead, Hargrave, Bosa, Young. I mean, those guys are starting players. Those guys are 3-down players. And so, yeah, they'll try to rotate guys in. They'll certainly do that. But, no, I expect Chase Young to be out there early, and I expect him to be out there often.
Matt, we appreciate the weather report and the injury updates and the insights. Enjoy the game today, and we will talk to you this week, man.
All right, and if I see Brock Purdy before the game, I'm going to tell him John Lenz says, ramp up your fashion game,
let's go,
buddy.
I know where he got the shirt because John wants one.
If he needs help, tell him to call me. I am obviously a fashionista, so you can just have him give me a call. I'll give him a couple tips.
And my other takeaway is, as a country boy myself, listening to Dennis talk about a farm was probably the most painful thing.
That was tough, was it not? I'm not at
that
farm.
was really.
You know
what's that called, a tractor?
I apologize. I am a city kid from inner city LA.
Yeah,
and,
we know now.
Tractor. We don't know tractor. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Well,
okay, these are going to be
ask Matt if you can buy
bounce back from.
Ask Matt if you can buy a Lucy. He won't know either, right? So, all right, Matt. We'll talk to you later, bro.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks,
Matt.
Matt.
It's a single cigarette. That's all. All right, when we come on. Yeah, when we come on back. Or Adam Copeland, Dennis Brown, John Lunn hanging out with you here. Niners and the Jags coming your way at 10 a.m. We will throw it over to Tim and Greg at 9 a.m., but we got plenty more to get to, including your 49er Player of the Week, some John Lynch sound, as well as the The Steve Young Show. That's all coming up next, only here on the Sports Leader.
Just the players, the spirit in the locker room, the spirit of the coaches, it's just different, you know what I'm saying? It's like a kind of that same thing at Ohio State where it's like you're expected to win, and it's just like that vibe of we're going to win, you know what I'm saying? So it definitely reminds me not Ohio State, but obviously it's in the field. These are grown men, so I'm just excited to, be blessed to with the opportunity to be at this franchise.
That is Chase Young. He is the newest 49er. We'll tell you about him in just a second. It's time for building the game plan as we get you ready for the Jags and the 49ers. John Lund, Super Bowl champion Dennis Brown, and, of course, Adam Copeland is here as well. Time for building the game plan. That's sponsored by Golden State. When you succeed, we succeed. Visit us today at goldenstatelumber.com and by Adam's favorite place, River Islands.
It was
Come
for
home
me.
To River Islands in Lathrop and discover the San Joaquin River lifestyle with its lakes, parks, and schools. Start your tour today at riverislands.com.
It was for me.
Very nice. Very well done. Game plan for Chase Young. Matt Mayoka just told us, and I'm really glad to hear that. I'm a big Chase Young fan. I know he had the injury, but I think he's being, and I want to ask you about this, Dennis, about culture, because I think he's being unfairly dragged through the mud. I mean, here's a guy, his senior year, or his junior year, after Nick Bosa left, He was the number 2 overall pick in 2020. Nick was the number 2 overall pick in 2019. He had 16.5 sacks his final year. He had 21.5 tackles for loss, and he forced 7 fumbles. He was the most dominant defensive performer in college football in years. Comes in his first year, has 7.5 sacks, and he's rookie of the year. Blows his knee out. They have to use the patellin for the other knee to fix it, so he's been slow to come back. In fact, his first game back was against the 49ers. But when healthy, a very dynamic defensive player. But here's where the people are taking shots at him, which is said in Washington and that he freelanced too much, that he really wasn't into the team type of thing. And look, there's not a more dysfunctional team to me than Washington. So my question to you is, can everything be solved for a player who has those questionable off the field? Because there's nothing on the field, it's the off the field stuff. Chris Kaczmarek comes in, says, look, we don't freelance around here. Here's our technique. His buddy Nick Bosa is here. It just seems to me that for a very talented player who, by the way, is a free agent at the end of the year and playing for a big contract, would come in here motivated, listen to what Kaczmarek has to say, buddy up with Nick Bosa. And if people saw this week, this guy standing next to Nick's a big guy. Chase Young towers over him and is a massive physical specimen, so it's not physical. But
yeah,
what's it going to be like going from Washington to San Francisco?
Well, I mean, he's a talent, first of all. And I think you said a couple key things. This is a contract year for him. And the freelance part, and he knows what's going to get him paid, and that's the sacks. So, I mean, I think it's going to be hard to get him away from that freelance style because he understands he's an edge rusher. And if the 49ers aren't going to be serious and sign him for big money, he's looking at the sacks. So there's going to be a lot of freelance still in him. So it's going to be a challenge. You know, Nick Bosa, defensive coordinator, you know, everybody say, listen, this is how we play within this defense. And yes, you're here because we can't rush the passer, but you also have to play the run. And that's the big thing. And that's the big thing that's missing in this defense right now is that run defense. So, you know, you can be a freelancer. He's been a freelancer. And I've seen this kid in college. I saw him when he played the 40. He took over that game when, you know, a couple of years ago when the Niners played. I mean, I think he had a sack, a strip. He ran one back for a touchdown. So he can take over a football game. But, you know, right now this team needs a defensive end that can set an edge, make tackles, and not lose contain. You can't be running inside. I mean, this defense it has to go back to the basics where they can stop the run first. But that freelance is in him. That's how he's played in the NFL. That's how he played in college. That freelance is in him. He's a great athlete now. He's huge. He's quick. He's got long arms. He's got a great first step off the ball. But he's got to play within this defense, you know, to kind of turn this whole thing around. But that freelance is in him. That's how he plays. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can kind of calm that down and say, listen, you got to play within this defense.
We talked all preseason. I mean, this was the most intriguing position on the team to me. I mean, we wanted to see what Brock could do when he came back healthy. We wanted to see what Christian McCaffrey would look like in a full season. I think we were all really intrigued by that. But for me, and I think I brought it up every game that we did preseason together, guys, was who's going to be the D-end opposite Nick Bosa? Because I looked at it the way we used to look at who could hit behind Barry Bonds or would hit right in front of Barry Bonds. Richard really had 37 home runs in 2001 because nobody wants to put a guy on base in front of a guy who's guaranteed going to hit one out. If you know you've got to double Nick Bosa, what is the guy opposite going to do? Week 1, when we saw Drake Jackson pick up 3 sacks in Pittsburgh, we thought that was it. We're like, man, even if they've got to now, even if he's an okay pass rusher, you've got to account for Bosa and you've got to worry about him. Then it fell flat. They add Randy Gregory, which I think is now going to be a really nice depth piece, right? The goal for a lot of these defensive lines under Chris Kaczmarek and Robert Saleh and D'Amico Ryans early on was to play about 70% of the snaps defensively. You can cycle some guys in. You've got 4 horses now. I'm really, really excited about what Chase Young brings and what he adds to the depth.
Yeah, listen, if you can't get it done now, with these horses up front, yep. I mean, what else can
back to the drawing board? Yeah,
what else could you ask for as a defensive coordinator with these 4 guys, and then someone like a Randy Gregory, then you still got Javon Kinlaw. I mean, if you can't do it now, right. I don't know what's going on. You got to figure it out now.
Well, look at this whole thing, and again, once you get drafted, it doesn't matter. You know that better than anybody, Dennis. But you're talking about 5 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and Javon Hargrave was a third, but, I mean, he might as well be a first because he got paid a ton of money. So, I mean, you're talking about 5 first-round guys who need to start playing like it. But you used a term earlier this week when you were on with our show, which is you've got to earn the right to rush the passer, and that's what you're talking about with Chase Young. What I think is going to be interesting today is if they can stop the run and get Jacksonville in third and long situations, which they haven't in the last few weeks done enough of, what is their pass rush package going to look like? Because, like you said, you want to get Randy Gregory on the field too. Yeah. So can Chase Young push inside who are you going to take off the field? Because now, if you bring Gregory to the outside, Chase Young against a guard, Nick Bosa is going to decide where he wants to be, which, again, is going to be another interesting one because Chase Young has been on the right side, basically right side of the defense for Washington, and Nick to the left. But then they move Nick around. Right. He decides where he wants to go. But I'm going to be intrigued by all of it. And Matt Mayoko, if you missed it, joined us and said Chase is going to start today. But what are they going to do on obvious passing downs? Because you want Chase Young in the game. You want Nick in the game. You want Gregory in the game. You want you want Hargrave in the game. I mean, they could go to a 5-man front, I guess.
Well, I mean, think about it like this. Think about the fourth quarter. If this game, becomes a shootout in this football game, and then the fourth quarter, you got those fresh legs. You got Gregory coming in or Kinlaw coming in. You got fresh legs. And, up front, I mean, you're talking about the NFL, Defensive Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, and all these first rounders. So, you get to be creative because you've got the horses now. You can run games. You can do a 5-man front. So if this D-line can get it done now, I mean, there's a lot of questions and what's really going on because now you got it set up. I mean, you've got it set up to be one of the best defensive lines in the National Football League.
Adam Copeland, Super Bowl champion, Dennis Brown, John Lund with you. Niners out of their bye week at 5-3. The Jags come in at 6-2. They've winners of 5 in a row. Niners losers of 3 in a row. I got a good note for you here. We had talked to Dr. Bob Stoll each week on our show on Tolbert and Copes, weekdays 2 to 6 here on the Sports Leader. And Dr. Bob Stoll, sports.com, or drbobsports.com. Great gambling advice. He does paid services, trial services, whatnot. He gave me this great note. 25 times since 1980 has a team that has lost 3 in a row, but still had a winning record. It's rare to do that in the NFL, to lose 3 games in a row and still have a winning record. Niners at 5-3 has faced a team that has won 3 or more in a row. It's only happened 25 times. The team that has lost the 3 in a row, 19-6 outright against the spread. Niners are favored in this game. That would be an outright win. So not a huge sample size, but frequently when this has happened, more often than not, small sample size, 19-6 though in those 25 times for the team that has lost 3 or more in a row, but has remained having a winning record. When we come on back, let's get into a little bit more of what's going on around the league. We'll get you a player to bank on, then we'll talk more a little bit later about what's going on in the NFC West, what the NFC playoff picture looks like as the Niners enter the second half of play, and then we'll take a look behind enemy lines. Adam Copeland, Dennis Brown, John Lund, Niners and the Jags on the Sports Leader.
Yeah, it's huge. Obviously, you get the ball into Debo's hands, and he can do some crazy stuff and help our team out big time. So to have Debo back will be huge. Trent as well, like that's going to be awesome to have him and his experience, his leadership, and sort of just help out with everything, run game, pass game. Like that's Trent's the best of the best. So have two of those guys back and give a spark and bring that energy to our offense. It's huge.
Adam Copeland, Super Bowl champion. Dennis Brown and John Lund hanging out with you here. Niners and the Jags coming your way. 10 a.m. kick, week 10. After the Niners entered the bye week at 5-3. Funny, 5-3 is not a terrible start to the year. If they were 0-3 and then went in at 5-3, we'd be hyped. But we're not so much because
it's just the way the three came.
Yeah,
it wasn't pretty.
If one of them came like week 2 or week 3, we wouldn't have felt as bad.
Yeah.
No, I think the offense will come around because Trent and Debo are coming back. My concern, and I would have never thought we'd say this, especially after the 5-0 start. I've never seen, ever since they've gotten decent, I'm not talking 17-18 Kyle Shanahan, where the defense is like, if we look at these last 3 games, they've had problems stopping the run. They've had problems stopping the pass. They haven't gotten to the passer. They have given up big plays. They've had breaks defensively where it's like wide open guys, blown coverages. Like everything you can have bad defensively, they've had. So it's like you said, Steve Wilkes comes to the sideline. I don't know how much that's going to help, but they have literally had every issue you can have just about defensively. And they haven't had the injuries they've had offensively. So it's not like you could come up with an excuse. So as weird as it is to say, I'm more concerned about the defense than I am the offense. I think the offense will come around.
And that's the key, right? I mean, they had no injuries. I mean, it's the same guys that, those first 5 weeks.
Bosa didn't go down.
Yeah, and something happened. Something clicked or offensive coordinator saw something, and all of a sudden there was no run defense, no pass defense.
I will say this. We talked at the beginning of the year about, with all the talent on this team, we thought, boy, if you lost McCaffrey, you could probably still be okay. If you lost one of the receivers, you'd be okay. If you lost Brock Purdy, I don't think we'd be hyped about it, but he was a third-string quarterback last year, right? I don't know what the confidence level is behind him, but I think we were all in agreement that the 2 guys you couldn't lose, Trent Williams and Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa hasn't performed, at least filling the stat sheet in the way we needed him to, and he's been beaten a few times. Trent Williams goes down with the injury. The run game falls apart. Things have not been nearly as good for the offense. Let's get you a player to bank on in this one because you guys are talking defense. I'm more concerned with the defense as well, but we've got a return on the offensive side of the ball. So time for a player to bank on, sponsored by Casino Matrix. Just drop in for gaming, dining, sports. Please gamble responsibly. 1-800-GAMBLER and by 5-Star Bank. Learn more at 5starbank.com. We've got Chase Young making his debut, Debo Samuel returning, Trent Williams returning, Brock Purdy. We'll see what he does out of the bye week after the interception sort of flurry in the second half of games before the bye. Dennis, who's your guy to bank on today?
I mean, it's just not one guy. I think this is we've been talking about it. I think it's a defense as a group. I think this whole defense has to get back to basics. You have to figure out how teams have figured out how to run against you. Yep. I think linebackers have to play a lot better, a lot about the tackling. And the secondary, I mean, all around, you just got to have tighter coverage. You got to have sticky coverage. And you can't get beat on these double moves like we've seen the last couple of weeks. And up front, you got to get after it. You have to stop the run. You got to get to the quarterback, get to pressure the quarterback, get him off his mark a little bit. So I don't think it's one player today. I think it's a group. I think the defensive group as a whole, coordinator included, you got to play a lot better.
I think there's one guy on both sides, but as crazy again as this is to say, I think the guy who's going to have a great game today and come back and be himself is Fred Warner. Too many missed tackles. He's gotten caught up in the wash because of the way, as we've talked about, offensive coordinators are attacking the 49ers. The reason why I think he's going to come back today is Travis Etienne is a really good running back that's underrated, and he's their version of Christian McCaffrey. They get the ball to him in a lot of ways, and they run a lot of screen passes. And again, you get up the field the way the 49ers do, teams are going to screen and run behind that. So today, I expect them to try that, but I expect Fred Warner and this entire defense, like you said, they've sat here for 2 weeks with people actually criticizing that at a really high level, especially on the national level. They've heard it all. I think they're going to come out with their hair on fire, and the guy that leads it's Fred Warner.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I think the defense has to set the tone today. I'm going to just go with it might be kind of a chalk answer here, but I'm going with Brandon Ayuk. I think the big factor for Debo Samuel's return here is going to be what he does. Now, it's not just his physicality and his versatility, but because you have to account for that, you can play him as a decoy in so many different ways, or as an option that can go for short yardage and then go out and pick up big explosive plays. A lot of what Debo does is energy. You see this in basketball. They'll throw an energy guy out there to kind of spruce things up. What Debo can do for this offense is not just what shows up in the stat sheet. I think it's what he does as a decoy in running around the field because you've got to account for he and McCaffrey. It unlocks something here. So I'm looking for Brandon Ayuk to have a big game because of what Deebo Samuel may help unlock. When we come on back, let's see what Kyle Shanahan thinks about how the 49ers bounce back from this 5-3, well, the 0-3 in their last 3 games. Third time in their last 4 games they're facing a team out of a bye. However, the Niners out of a bye themselves. Adam Copeland, Super Bowl champion Dennis Brown, and John Lunn hanging out with you here. We are streaming live on twitch.tv/thesportsleader. We are streaming on YouTube, KNBR.com, and the KNBR app, and you can just flip on your radio, KNBR 104.5 and 680. Kyle Shanahan joins myself and Tom Tolbert every week of the football season. When we come on back, we'll play that conversation for you. One of our best Kyle hits, really, of all time. You got really into the weeds with how they're going about trying to switch this thing and flip things around, and how it is that he deals with a coach coming from the booth down to the sidelines, as Steve Wilks will today. When we come on back, our convo with Kyle Shanahan next on the Sports Leader.
Curtsy, San Francisco.
Adam Copeland, Super Bowl champion, Dennis Brown, John Lunn with you. Niners and the Jags coming your way for a Week 10 tilt kickoff in just under 2 hours here, and we'll have it for you on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the Sports Leader, streaming on Twitch, YouTube, and the KNBR app. Kyle Shanahan, the head coach of the Niners, joins myself and Tom Tolbert each and every week of the season, and it's actually always on Thursdays unless the Niners are playing a national game, and then we move it around. Anyway, Tom asked Kyle to start the conversation about the conversation that he had with Steve Wilkes regarding the decision to move from the booth for this game to call plays from the sideline.
Oh, it's something we talk about a little bit all the time because, I mean, I always used to when I was a coordinator. There's things you want to be on the field for. There's things you want to be in the box for. It goes both ways. So whatever you do, there's pluses and minuses to both of it. But it's actually not that big of a deal. I think that's kind of the thing. Everyone talks about it so much and what's going to be the difference, and nothing. He can go up and talk to a person face-to-face if he wants, but that's not something that happens a ton in games. It's about the preparation you do in the week. It's about getting everybody coordinated on the same page in the groups. It's not sitting there and just motivating an individual. That's what you do throughout the week. You guys are out there doing their jobs and trying to focus on a ton of things. So I think the whole thing on the sidelines is a little bit overrated. But it is nice to be down there, to be able to, I mean, I was in the box 1 year as a coordinator, and I loved it. I would always want to be up there. It's just so much easier with a desk, a chair to focus and write all your thoughts out and be able to organize everything. Well, it's stuff you can't do on the sideline, especially in bad weather. But there are times where it's like, man, I need to talk to this dude. And it's not quite the same when they get on the phone and call you up there. And it's not always quite the same when you usually just talk to a position coach, and the position coach gets the word to them, and they learn it, and then they go out there and they try to do it better the next time you call it, and then you watch the film all together on Monday. That's why it all doesn't make a huge difference, but I would, Steve and myself, I want to be there with the linebackers a little bit more. You know, I mean, just with Fred and stuff, where all the calls go through, and we'll see how it goes. We'll see how he enjoys it. We'll see how Fred is, and we'll take it week by week.
So the running game's been a little spottier the last 3 games than it was the first 5. I think you have your 3 lowest rushing totals the last 3, 25, 22, 23 attempts the last 3 games. I think 28 against the Rams may have been the previous low, but Trent Williams being out, obviously that's huge. Having him when he comes back, that'll make a big difference. But other than that, what have you seen when you watch the film that needs to be cleaned up a little bit with or without Trent?
We haven't broke a real long one, which always hurts. I want to say since the first drive of the Cleveland game. But I also feel like if you looked at stats just over time, I bet you when you lose, you don't have many run attempts.
Yeah,
and when you win, you do. That's why my goal usually is always to get 30 runs, because usually when you get past 30 runs, you win. I bet if you look at our record with that, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's not like you don't want to say, oh, we're just not running it because we're down. But a lot of times that does happen. But I feel the main reason you're not running is because we don't stay on the field as much. Especially going back to even Cleveland and stuff. You know, we went through a number of plays without getting a first down, a number of drives. We're not a team who's going to just go run, pass.
Yeah.
We usually do mix it up, and it's usually 50-50 on first or second down, or sometimes we'll throw it 4 times in a row, and then we might run it 4 times in a row after that. But if you aren't going on drives and getting points, it doesn't balance out that well, and that's something that we haven't done great here. It's, we haven't been punting a ton. We haven't done great, in the last 3 games.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of does take away from your run game. You end up not really being able to wear guys down to where you end up getting that big one. You don't get to really mix the guys all in. And then you also, especially when you're down a couple scores in the fourth quarter, you feel like you need some bigger plays.
Yeah.
And when you're in 2-shell defenses, you're rarely going to get that with the run game.
Talking to 49ers head coach Kyle Shanahan here on the UMA guest line. Chase Young, first time we'll get to see him this week. Is it? I always wonder with defense, because it's a little bit different than offense. It's not as many plays to learn per se, but what happens with him? Does he just sort of take the bubble wrap off and let him go? How exciting is this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're so right with the positions, and not only just offense and defense, but also D-line.
Right.
Yeah, it's not trying to take anything away from their position, but usually it's about going and killing the quarterback and understanding how to play the run. And ours kind of tie exactly the same way together. So you got to understand some of the stunts we call, which everyone does everywhere. You just got to get used to our verbiage and what we call them. And you got to get used to a few signals in 2 minutes and things like that. So it's pretty easy for a D lineman to jump in. But you got to go out there and earn it. You're not just going to give stuff to guys based off our whole group. We got a lot of guys who've been working here. We like to do it by rotation. rotation and keep guys as fresh as possible. And what I'm just really excited is adding 2 guys to our group here over the last month. Not only we're going to get better with those 2, but it helps everyone else get better because you're more confident to rotate guys and put guys in any situation, and keeps guys fresher. And I really believe the key to rushing a quarterback and being a good pass rush team is to be able to swarm by it's how you rush by a group. Yeah. And I feel like we've had some good individual rushes this year, but I just feel collectively our 4 guys rushing together, or even 5 when we bring a linebacker with them, we need to do it better as a whole. So when the quarterback steps up to miss one guy doing good in rush, there's 3 other guys there coming off blocks, and the way to do that is to have strength in numbers, and we've helped ourselves here in the last month on that.
Yeah, it's funny how one guy looks like it adds so much depth to that position too. Just circling back real quick to Steve Wilkes coming down to the sideline. Does anything change for you and his communication during the game? I don't know how much you talked to him during the game, but what's going to be different about that with him on the sideline?
0.
Nothing.
Yeah. Every person I talk to, I do it right through that microphone you're seeing. The same way I'm talking to you guys right now. Yep. It's very rare I'm going to go up and turn the microphone off and just, when I talk to guys, usually it's in front of all the coaches because you want people to hear the information. So if I am talking to Steve, he's been in the box, so I haven't had a choice. But when I've talked to anybody, whether it's the box or the sidelines, I want the other position coach to hear what I'm saying to the D coordinator or what I'm saying to a receiver coach or anybody, because everyone does relate together, and you're trying to hit individual parts of a group, but it's all about collectively how you guys play together. So whatever coaching points or things you're telling people, you want the other people on the staff who are relaying stuff to their groups to be on the same page.
Is it weird if a guy's like 5 feet away from you and you're talking through a headset?
It is really weird. And then I have sometimes guys aren't that used to talking, because if you don't have to call plays and stuff and everything, or you don't get on there that much unless something bad has happened. So a lot of times I'll have a guy run down to start talking to me, and I'm far away, and I just look at him. I'm like, will you just push your button? I can hear you. You can go back with everyone else. Just push the button. And then they're like, oh, yeah, that's right. Push it, and then we can talk.
I wanted to ask you about something in regards to Hufanga, because it seemed to me, and again, I could be wrong on this, I just wanted to ask you, it seemed like last year he was up near the line of scrimmage a little bit more. He was blitzing a little bit more. Like he was more involved in a lot of the stuff that was going on my television screen. And the reason I say that, because I can't see everything that's going on at the back end of the defense because it doesn't show it all. But has he been as involved in all that as he was last year?
He's as involved. I just think last year he made some unbelievable plays that just jumped out to the whole world, and so they sticked out so much, and he hasn't had as many of those this year. And I'm not putting that all on him. I'm putting that on our whole group. But when you're trying to notice people on TV and stuff like that, usually it's going to be because they stick out in an area making a play, and he has been up there. I mean, he's sometimes up, Gibbs sometimes up, depends on certain situations. We have blitzed him. But he hasn't really had that impact play that sticks out in your memory. And there's still a lot of season to play, and I'm real happy with Huff and where he's going. He's been working his tail off, and planning on those coming soon. What
makes Travis Etienne tough to stop? Because he seems like, Trevor Lawrence is really good. Is it Trevor Etienne or Travis? I think it's Travis Etienne.
Travis Etienne, Trevor Lawrence.
Thank you. I thought I was going to screw that up. I didn't, and then I did. What makes him difficult to deal with? Obviously, he catches the ball to the backfield. He's explosive. They use him a lot now. Like, he's a focal part of their offense. How key will he be? And, without getting into detail, what's the difficulties in maybe stopping him?
Well, I think we loved him just studying him in college as a running back. And I remember when he got drafted, I think it was first round, they said he was going to play receiver and move him there right away. And just to even have that option with a running back to say you're going to move in a receiver shows you the type of talent he has. But when you think that, maybe you think he's undersized or plays like a receiver, and then you turn on the film and you watch him as a running back, and the guy runs hard. I mean, he gets his pads down, he lowers, he can break you off, he can create an edge, and then he can run through those arm tackles, and he can go up inside, but he also has that speed and talent to bounce it outside, which he looks to do a lot. And if there is a lane, he's got a great chance to be gone. And so when you look at that as a runner and how he's been advertised as a receiver, which is accurate, that's a problem. It's similar to our guy in that way, and they're using him a lot, and he's getting better and better each game.
I'm curious, because when you said on the headset, everybody's talking on the headset. I just thought, how difficult is that to get used to as a head coach, your first time head coach, What are the things you're listening to on the headset? I mean, not only that, you're the play caller, so you got to know what's going on. You got to keep track of the clock. You got time management things to worry about, end of the halves, end of the game. You got plays to call. You're also listening to what's going on in your head. How difficult is that to do all that? Or can you just turn everybody off from time to time and say, I'm done with you guys?
I mean, that's why I have zero personality on game day. Like, that's why I'm not sitting there cheering a lot. You don't see me there talking a lot because I am sitting there focused as can be, thinking about a lot of things. And I do think it's a little easier for an offensive coach just because that's how it's always been. I mean, when you're an offensive play caller, you're not the head coach. Doing this for the 9 years, I was a coordinator 9 years before I came here. And I always felt like every time you call a play, you got to know what the time is on the clock. Yeah. You always got to think about, all right, should I go through a pass here? I do have a timeout. All right, I know I'm trying to kill the clock, but it's almost how many seconds from the 2-minute warning? All right, when should I take my pass? When should I take a run? Should I just call a screen? So I get like all that stuff. I mean, that's what you're thinking about when I was 28. Yeah. And you have to. And the head coach is ultimately in charge of it. But usually where I've been, they want me to say when I want it. And I do think it's a little bit hard on the defense because a lot of that stuff you don't totally have to think about. And then all of a sudden you become a head coach, and then you do. So those are a little bit more, but I've been through it a lot, so it's comfortable for me. But everywhere you go is a little bit different, and some headsets are crickets. They don't want a lot of people talking on it, and because it's usually the play caller asking questions. But when our stuff gets too quiet, you should ask our coaches. I start getting irritated with it. I want to hear stuff, and there sometimes new guys will be like, "Well, I don't want to talk too much. I don't want to mess up your concentration." And I'm always very clear, like, if you are messing it up, I promise I will let you know. But I like to hear information, whether I say anything or not. Just hearing people kind of say what happened in their world, I kind of store it in the back of my head. Yeah. But I want to hear a little. But once it gets too much, there is a fine line because we do have some stuff to do, and I got to get that play call out.
Let me ask you this real quick. I know you got to run, but I want to know about the decisions you make at the end of the first half in regards to clock and when you have the ball, when the other team has the ball, when to use timeouts, because I find those kind of fascinating. Like if the other team is deep in their own territory, let's say 2nd and 4 with 1:30 left, and they don't call a timeout, or maybe even a 3rd and 3, do you call a timeout to try to get the ball back, or do you say if we don't stop them here, then they have 2 timeouts and they could potentially drive down the field and get points? And then the offensive end of it, trying to figure out how aggressive we want to be. And I know getting the ball in the second half probably plays a lot into that, but those decisions are kind of fascinating to me because you could roll the dice and go with it, or they could blow up in your face sometimes.
Oh, definitely. That's why I kind of laugh at the analytics on that stuff.
Yeah.
Not because you don't. I respect it and I listen to it. But whenever anyone says, like, all right, like the scenario you gave me, it's 2nd and 4, you got to try to double them up and score again. You use your timeout here. It says you got a 75% chance of winning if you do. Yep. And I'm like, all right, do you know who the quarterback is that we're playing against? Yeah. So it's 2nd and 4. You want me to call a timeout? And then look what I did in the playoffs at Green Bay 2 years ago. They were backed up. It was 2nd and 10. And they were on, I think, like the -4. And it's always my decision, so I'm not blaming anybody. Yep. But our analytics guy goes, Kai, you got to call a timeout. And I hesitate. I go, there's no way. That's Aaron Rodgers. And he goes, all right, well, that's what it says. And I sat and thought about it. We hadn't scored, so I was very frustrated. It was such a low-scoring game. It was about to go to 3rd and 10. I'm like, screw it, timeout. And they're on the -4, so it's now 3rd and 10. We're going to have plenty of time. We stop them, it looks like. It's going to be great. Aaron breaks the pocket and gets an off-schedule play, hits a guy down the sidelines, and they get a 60-yard gain. And I'm just sitting there saying, not yelling at anyone for telling me to do it. I'm saying I got to be the dumbest guy in the world for listening to someone like that when I know who Aaron Rodgers is. And he made an unbelievable play, and I was so upset. And it was so funny because Jimmy Ward was the one who got out of his coverage when he broke the pocket and gave up the big play. But then Jimmy Ward completely redeemed himself because he blocked the field goal with 3 seconds left in the half, and so there was no damage done. But one of the biggest things that I've learned here in like the last 7 years is you look at the stats with turnovers, and turnover is the biggest stat on winning and losing, besides points, obviously. But the second one after that, which I didn't used to believe because it didn't totally make a lot of sense to me, but it's been that way over time. The team who finishes the ball or scores at the end of the second quarter is the second highest percentage of winning behind turnovers. And it's a stat that I used to hear all the time. And when I was a coordinator, I was like, whatever. Like, you can't think that way. Like, you're trying to score. Like, that's what you're trying to do. Like, I don't want any other mindset. And since I've been here, we've studied it a lot. And I've heard of it a lot, and we started really following that in 2019. And you should look at our stats from 2019 at the end of second quarter. And that's what led to, you look at it in the Super Bowl, what we were trying to do. It's all about trying to finish with the ball and make sure that other team doesn't get a chance, not just because Mahomes is on their side. Yeah. That is a big deal. But we did that whole year, and that was the first year I tried it, and the stats went exactly how they had like the 15 years before that everyone had showed me that I didn't believe in. And since then, I feel pretty strongly in it.
That is really interesting. But yeah, the analytics can't tell you if it's Aaron Rodgers or Tyler Bagent. It's like, I don't know. It's 75%. That's all we got for you. We don't have quarterbacks.
Or if it's -5 degrees out and you can't feel your hands.
Exactly.
Great stuff from Kyle Shanahan. You missed a full interview. You can check out all of that on KNBR.com and the KNBR app. He does join myself and Tom Tolbert right here on KNBR each and every week on Thursdays throughout the football season. We'll take a quick break here. Adam Copeland, Super Bowl champion, Dennis Brown, and John Lund hanging out with you here ahead of the Niners and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jags 6-2, the hottest team in football. The Niners come in at 5-3, losers of 3 in a row. Both teams coming out of the bye. When we come on back, we'll get a little deeper into this one, and then we'll go out and we'll talk to Tim Ryan in Jacksonville. Actually, it'll be Greg Papa, I think, today from the booth. We'll talk to Greg Papa, who will be on the call for this one. The Steve Young Show, your 49er player spotlight. That's all coming up only here on the Sports Leader.
You're used to having a plan. You're used to being, for myself speaking, being back there and having a plan of what I want to do, how I want to start the game, how I want to kind of settle in. I mean, these guys are pretty unique. You got to be great at taking what the defense gives you. You got to be able to have explosives too. You can't just throw everything underneath, and you can't just run the ball every play. Like, you got to try to take some shots and take advantage of some stuff in the back end. So you got to have it all. You know, you can't just pick one thing. Teams are too good in this league to be one-dimensional. So, you know, we'll have a good plan for them.
That's Trevor Lawrence. He's got beautiful hair. He's the quarterback for the Jaguars, getting ready for the 49ers and Jags. Thank you so much for joining us early on this Sunday morning. Dennis Brown, he is a Super Bowl champion. Adam Copeland is here. John Lund, thanks for hanging out. Jags and 49ers. 5-3, lost 3 in a row. You don't want to go to 5-4. This team has Super Bowl aspirations. So take me into the locker room a little bit here. Had a bye week. You get Debo back. You get Trent back. You get a little bit of a boost, I think, by bringing in Chase Young. Your front office says, here you go. We got you a really nice player. What's the mindset going into this team? And I'm not going to call this must-win because it's not must-win, but it certainly is critical. So what are the players thinking in the locker room?
I don't know. I mean, I would hope that, you would have some sense of urgency, right? I mean, we say it's not you have to win a game, but I think as a player, I mean, losing 4 games straight, that's not that's not good. It's never good. So it's sense of urgency. You got to be a little tense. I think you got to understand where you are. You're on the road, and then you watch tape of this football team, and you see that they're a good football team. So I think it's got to be a sense of urgency. I mean, we say you don't have to. It's not a must win. It's a must win as far as the player goes. And then if you lose 4 games, then the critics really jump on your back. So I mean, I think it's crucial. I think as a player, you sit in the locker room, you understand the situation you're in. And it's urgent, and you got to have that sense of urgency. You got to go out and play like that. 9
games left where you stand right now at 5-3. I don't think you can go 6-3 and get the 1 seed. I think you got to go at least 7-2, including a win over Philadelphia.
You're just saying the rest of the way, yeah.
The rest of the way. So 1 seed is still in play. Philadelphia idle today. They're off. Actually, a lot of good teams off today. Philadelphia, Kansas City, Miami, and there's one of their pretty good teams. The Rams are off.
Well, and here's just to look at the NFL today. Like you said, Philly's off. Dallas is home against the Giants, and they have, it's Tommy DeVito. He's the quarterback. That's not going to work. So Dallas is going to win today. The big game to watch is Seattle. They've got Washington, and I'm interested to see how Washington responds. No Montez Sweat, no Chase Young. Sam Howell's a nice quarterback, but their offensive line is not held up against the pass, so Seattle might get home a little bit. So I'm going to assume for a second Seattle wins today, Dallas wins today. You're not going to get a whole lot of help. Philadelphia's off. The goal for the 49ers has to be not only, but first and foremost, the division. I'm not a big Seattle guy because Geno Smith is old Geno, turnover Geno, not the guy from last year. So I think they're going to win the division.
Lost the deep ball for some reason. It's unreal. Last year. I mean, he was so effective. That was the thing last year. He was so accurate. Yeah. His completion percentage was through the roof. They had Kenneth Walker.
He didn't turn the ball over.
Not at all.
And this is what he's doing this year. Cincinnati, they had a chance to win twice inside the 20 in the last 5 minutes. Throws interceptions, holding the ball on 4th down. So I just don't think they're better defensively this year, but they're really struggling offensively, especially on the line.
Pretty impressed with the defense, actually.
Yeah, they're good.
Seattle.
But
except for last week.
I think the issue becomes, like you said, this is a team that thought Super Bowl, Super Bowl, Super Bowl. So if they want the game, if they want the NFC Championship game or everything to go through here, you've got to get within that game of Philadelphia and then obviously win that game. Well, we're sitting here right now, and they've got 1 loss. And the 49ers have 3. So you got to hope at some point before that Philly game that they lose a game. And remember, they lost to the Jets, so it's not like they can't lose. They lose to the Jets. Jalen Hurts is stumbling around, and nobody's really talking about that
a whole lot. He's got an injured left shin. It's pretty obvious. He's not able to get off the same way. What I was told by a source in Philadelphia.
Oh, look at that.
That was that in that game against, was it Miami, that he threw the interception to the left side, the 3-pick game? He had got his leg crunched a couple of plays before that. He's not able to run right now the same way. He's not able to plant on that same front foot. And in doing so, it's created a bunch of lollipop throws.
He just hasn't been as good. So, look, I'm not saying Philadelphia is not good.
They're
a
damn good team, yeah.
But they lose one more game, and now you're in that situation where if you beat them, then you've got the tiebreaker on them. One thing that 49ers fans can look at as a positive right now, for some reason, even when Kyle's teams are good, they struggle in September, October. They just have. November, if you throw out 2020 with all the injuries, so 19 where they were good all year, 21, 22, he's 8-2 in November. So November, December, January, Kyle gets it going. I don't know why. So why would this year be any different? They're getting healthier offensively. Brock knows he can't turn the football over. I expect them to play a great game today. They have to do it. But for some reason, Kyle's teams get momentum and play better. And Dennis, your teams did that. I don't know what the thought process is, but they know they have to do well. And over the last 2 weeks, the defense has been ripped every which way, and I just think they're going to come out motivated and play well.
God, I hope so. I mean, it's been torture watching this defense play. I mean, as a defensive guy, I'm a little partial, but watching this defense play, it goes back to when they, when every play was a broken coverage, every play was a big gash run play. So, and to see this team play the way they played that first 5 weeks, and then the last 3 weeks seeing a complete turnaround, is frustrating. And that's the heart of this entire team is that defense. And it's not just the pass rush. It's defending the run. The linebackers, the defensive line, the guys up front making plays. So, they have to. And you have to have that sense of urgency. You have to have it. And I know as the season started, the first thing we talk about is Super Bowl and all the great talent on both sides of the ball. And the only people who can beat them are themselves. I think they've been beating themselves a little bit. So they get back on track.
49ers and the Jags coming your way in under 2 hours, under an hour and a half now. Kickoff at 10 a.m. We'll have it for you right here on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader. Adam Copeland, Super Bowl champion, Dennis Brown, John Lund with you. We are going to check in with Tim Ryan. Tim Ryan's going to be on the call today with Greg Papa in Jacksonville. We'll go out to the booth and catch up with him in just a few minutes after we get you the 49er player spotlight and the Steve Young Show. Niners at 5-3 looking to end this 3-game losing streak. We got all that and more in our chat with Tim Ryan coming up only here on the sports leader. Adam Copeland back with your 49er player spotlight. And why don't we go with the newest 49er, Chase Young, the number 2 overall pick just a couple of years ago, played opposite Nick Bosa at Ohio State. He comes in and is going to help the 49ers in that pass rush. He's immediately the leading sack getter on the Niner roster. Niners have not been getting to the quarterback. Chase Young shows up to help this Niner defense. We're in number 92 now. Here he is. Says it's going to be like in college, a race to get to the quarterback.
I think it's going to be just like in college, just a race to the quarterback, kind of. It's different when you're playing with your. I guess we done played in college together, so it's gonna be real fun. That's all I know.
Chase Young joins his 49er defense. 12 solo tackles on the year, 5 sacks for the former Ohio State standout. The 2020 number 2 overall pick joins his buddy Nick Bosa, and that's why he is this week's 49er player spotlight. The Hall of Famer, number 8, Steve Young, joins myself and Tom Tolbert every Wednesday throughout the football season in the 5 o'clock hour. It's the best half hour in radio. This week, Steve talked about the potential upside of the 49ers in the acquisition of Chase Young.
Well, remember when 94, and we Charles Mann and Richard Dent, and we were throwing people at the wall. We had a lot of guys, now he's younger and seemingly has a lot more football in him than the guys that we signed that were a little older and more experienced and Super Bowl experience. But people rolling into our locker room, I'm not worried about new personalities. I really trust our locker room. I think it's strong and people coming in, not a problem. It's all good for him, right?
Yeah.
He's the one that's going to benefit. He's the one that has the opportunity. He's the one that can bring something to us, and it's up to him in many ways. It sounds like people you'd listen to that are in the know, that have played around him, that there's a lot of talent but not being realized. And maybe, is it not being deployed right? Is it not being coached correctly? Is it, how people can inspire you and don't inspire you? I mean, it could be. Could Ron Rivera be somebody that just doesn't inspire him? Theoretically. So there could be huge upside if that's the case. But if it's just generally he's been hurt and now he's not performing and he can't give you what you think you can, then it's still going to be helpful. But there's a real upside potential where something really cool could happen. So I'm in for that.
Thanks for joining us. Getting ready for the 49ers and the Jags. Top of the hour. Greg and Tim will take over on the call. Speaking of Tim, we have him right now. Joins us courtesy of the Uma Guest Line. What's happening?
What's up, dude?
Johnny Lund, my man. It's nice here, dude. The big boys are going to be able to play today, bro. It is overcast and cool for Florida. So fired up, man. Get this thing going.
Our dude, we're hearing from Matt Mayoka that our guy, Chase Young, 92, going to start today and play quite a role. What do you think?
I would not doubt that. I mean, we saw him doing a lot of it during the week in practice. I would say he's at least going to get 30 snaps, depending on how many plays they play. Now, Cleve Furl played probably his best game against Cincinnati a couple of weeks ago, but it's not like he just came off the street and hadn't been playing football in Chase Young. So excited to see what he brings to the table. Obviously, there's a lot of things in this 49er run game that's a little bit different in terms of how they defend the run and how they use the defensive ends, but man, he is a big body, Johnny. I don't think a lot of people anticipated that he would be as long and as thick as he is, because he is an absolute beast. So they've got some wrinkles that I'm looking forward to watching in the pass rush game. Hopefully they can get a little Buckeye blitz dialed up with him and Bosa working together. I think that's a possibility. But, fired up to see him wearing a 49er uniform.
And and I can dig it. Sacks. It's all about sacks. But I'm old school, and but I'm an old two-gap guy. And this defense has to play the run better. Is Chase going to be a guy?
They're gone. DB, they're gone, man. I'm with you, bro. Can you squeeze the cutoff block, please?
Can you please? Can you not be behind, a cutoff block? I mean, can you not get reached?
Can you not be 4 yards up the field and get trapped?
And it hurts.
Find some of that.
It hurts my soul when I watch that. So, I mean, I think that is the one thing that this defense needs to kind of work on, Tim. And I don't know if you see the same thing. I know they spread out.
I see the same thing.
They spread out this defense, and then they just hit the gaps. And that's what it's been for the last 3 weeks.
And Cincinnati especially. I mean, you see all that spread attack and those splits inside.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a lot of grass to cover with a four-man front when you're sitting in a 3 technique and a 2 technique. And they don't play a lot of 1 technique either in their over and under defenses, which is interesting. And part of that, has allowed the center to have a free release on the inside linebacker, Fred Warner, on some of those perimeter runs. So I'm totally with you on that. They think the risk is worth the reward, obviously, with this defense and the attacking style. But I think the players know. I think Armstead realizes there's times when you just got to hunker down and you got to play the run, and they're going to have to do it today. When you look at what these guys want to do, there's no different in terms of the runs that they're going to see today. This team loves to run that double crunch where they really just double both defensive tackles and let Travis Etienne pick a spot where he finds a crease and try to slam it up in there. So they're going to have to hold up onto those double teams. I think the biggest thing on Etienne and the run, look, when you really watch the tape, a lot of it is where this defense has been bleeding in the run game. It's guys not being in their gaps. And you're right, there are times when they're getting too far up the field and they're running it underneath them with a wham or a trap or just the D lineman running himself out of the play. But there's also times when I see guys in a perfect position in the B gap and then they want to peek back into the A gap, not trusting that their linebacker is going to be there, and then boom, it cuts right back to the B gap and there's a crease. So you got to trust the scheme. That happens when you start pressing. They just need to get back to 49er ball and play the scheme that's called take care of your house, keep your house clean in terms of your gap, and if it goes somewhere else, let someone else take the minus on the film review after the game. But I think the biggest thing is to keep Travis Etienne. Now, he is a beast, and his yards per carry isn't great, but he's got 7 rushing touchdowns. He's the number 6 rusher in the NFL, and he can bounce it in a hurry. And you go back and watch Joe Mixon in the Cincinnati game, and teams have been able to get out onto the perimeter. Got to set the edge on this guy and keep him running between the tackles. This game, at the end, and I think I said it to John the other day, if not, is with Copes on Friday, is whoever runs the ball better in this game probably ends up winning it, because they are not they got good receivers, they got a very good quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, who's got a great feel for the system here in year number 2, but it's a lot of dink and dunk, methodically work themselves down the football field. They have had their mistakes with 13 turnovers, but on the other side of the ball, you do not want to get one-dimensional against this defense, because they are tight in coverage in terms of where they're supposed to be. There's a lot of room. There's a lot of holes to throw into. But if you're playing catch-up, they do a good job, and you're one-dimensional, they do a good job of keeping it all up in front of them. So I think it's paramount that they're able to run the football a little bit today, and that's going to be a challenge against these guys because they are two gappers up front. You turn on their tape, and it'll warm your heart, DB, because they play the old a bear front. So they're covering the center and both guards, 2-3 techniques and a 0 technique, and they keep the linebackers clean, and they get off blocks. They disengage. So it's going to be a challenge getting those guys blocked up front.
Oh, my goodness, Tim, you're talking dirty to me. Come on, man.
Well, say, Tim,
all you got to do is say two gap, and that's pillow talk for Dennis Brown.
Well, despite what people say, Tim, just by common belief, I'm also an old two gap guy. Okay, just so you guys know. So you got me going. Just real quick, Tim.
I knew it, Coach.
See, cut from the same cloth, dude. Deebo Samuel, you talked to me about this on Friday. Just a quick thought on him, because what you said to me was great. I loved it. You said it's not just what he does in the offense, it's how he works as a decoy. What does that do today?
Yeah, Deebo decoy. It opens up. He's such a threat when he gets the ball in his hands, and the 49ers know how to feed him the rock. So they are definitely aware of that on defense, and he will split zones, stretch zones out, take man defenders with him. There's times when they'll have to double team them when they're in man. And then when you look at this defense, a lot of the 5-man front stuff, I could see some early throws on early downs when they're in their base personnel, because they're always bringing 5 unless they got some type of little fire zone, something where they're sending a guy off the edge. They're still bringing 5, and they drop one of those outside linebackers. But they play a lot of 3 deep. Probably their most go-to coverage. They'll mix in some 2 long down and distance. They'll mix in with 2 deep. They'll mix in some man coverage, but really they're a 3 deep football team. And when you think of the 5-man front, instead of 3 deep 4 under, it's 3 deep and 3 under. So there's one less player in coverage. Deebo on those crossing routes is going to be a bitch today, I would think. I mean, he is absolutely lethal at those yards after the catch. Had a great week of practice, so I don't think it's any it's when no surprise that they've lost all 3 games that he hasn't played, because he is such a huge weapon in this offense, not just when he gets the ball in his hands, but as you said, as a decoy, and then the position versatility. I would anticipate him running the rock a little bit today too. We know he can do that, so happy to have him back.
Tim, have a great call, and we will talk to you later, man.
All right, PD, good talking to you. You guys enjoy the game. Let's get the tourniquet on and stop this bleeding.
Let's do it, man. All right, Niners and the Jags coming your way at 10 a.m. We are just over an hour until kickoff here, and we will throw it to Tim and Greg in just a second here. For Dennis Brown, John Lennon, Adam Copeland, we'll be back with you after the game right here on KNBR 104.5 and 680 for the postgame show. We'll get your reaction as well at 808 KNBR, streaming on twitch.tv/thesportsleader, as well as on YouTube, KNBR.com, and the KNBR app. We'll throw it over to Greg and Tim. Niners and the Jags coming your way next on the Sports Leader.
Hey, sports fans.